Assalamu alaikum. We practiced this, but they didn't get it yet. It's all right. Next year, we'll get it done. When you think about the greatest heavyweight champion in the world, who do you think about? Yes. Long before formal boxing was known all over the world, enslaved men would prize fight and sometimes gain their freedom, depending on whether or not the master got enough money and prestige for the enslaved boxers to win and keep the proceeds, of course. Muhammad Ali. He was born January the 17th, 1942, born Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. in Louisville, Kentucky. At the age of 12, this is a delightful story. He had gotten a bicycle and someone stole it. And so he reported it to the police, who is a friend of his, I believe, by the name of Joe Martin. And he told them if he's going to catch the person that took his bike, and he was going to beat him up. So Joe Martin said, I think it might be a good idea for you to learn how to fight. And coincidentally, of course, we know that there are no coincidences. Joe Martin was a policeman in the town. He also had a boxing gym. So Muhammad started practicing, and he got good. He got real good. He never found his bike, however. So he decided that he wanted to be on their local TV station, and it was called Tomorrow's Champions. And he was. He did very well. He won the Golden Gloves, the National AAU, the Olympics in Rome in 1960, and he won the golden medal. However, his fame did not carry to his hometown. He would wear his medal proudly all over Louisville. And he went downtown to get a hamburger, and they told him that they didn't serve Negroes. So in 1960, he had his first professional fight, Tony Hunziker. 1964, he upset Sonny Liston and got the heavyweight title of the world. Prior to that, he started studying a wrestler by the name of Gorgeous George, and he was obnoxious. He would always talk about how pretty he was and all that. So then Muhammad Ali started using those same kinds of phrases, how pretty he was and how fast he was, and he just went on. He's the only boxer that has won 3 times the championship for the heavyweight title. So I'm going to regress a little bit. When he was in school, he actually did graduate in 1960. He was 18 years old. He was 376 out of 391 on the Richter scale. So there was only 15 people that was worse off than he was in terms of being able to pass the test or whatever he had to do. But his idea is that he believed that all God's servants had all kinds of wealth of knowledge, and that was important, and many of them were illiterate. by today's standards, or even by those standards at that time. He said, wealth is knowledge. Knowing your purpose of life is the key of living a righteous life. So when he got these lessons from Gorgeous George, he had gone to Las Vegas and talking about how wonderful and how pretty he was. And Gorgeous George had blonde hair, and he was just, I remember him, he was just incredible. And his obnoxiousness. So Muhammad, he had his swag because he was really good looking, 6'3", built like everything. And he was a trash talking rascal. He was an entertainer. I remember him so clearly. I've never been so fascinated with a boxer than I was with him. Either you loved him or you hated him. There was no in between. He was so good, he would predict the round that he was going to knock you out in. Or they were going to call the fight to a close. He was absolutely awesome. One of his favorite sayings was, float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. And wherever he went, all these kids would just gather around him, and they just keep on saying that, float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. One of his other favorite sayings is, hands can't hit what the eyes can't see, because he was quick. And this one I really loved. If you think the world was surprised when Nixon resigned, wait till I whip Foreman's behind. So he was the precursor of rap or hip hop, because he had some really wonderful sayings. My feelings about him is that he was one of the best leaders, because there was a blend of confidence, and then there was a blend of humility with him as well. He absolutely knew that he was drawing all of his power from God, and he called God Allah. The humility connected him with the source of all power, the presence of Allah, the God within. Humility means serving for the benefit of others. And he did that. He did a lot of wonderful charitable initiations, and he was very, very active in helping underprivileged children. He had a strong mind. And he was real clear that the Nation of Islam, which he joined, and that they did not believe in killing. The Islamic religion does not believe in killing. And he was a Muslim first. It's a peaceful religion. He had a strong mind, a man of his word, determination, a powerful mindset, because he could envision something like Karen said, and it would come to fruition. So on his tombstone in Louisville, Kentucky, it reads, he took a few cups of love, 1 tablespoon of patience, 1 teaspoon of generosity, and 1 pint of kindness. That was who he really was on the inside, and how he really was in terms of dealing with his children as well, which he had 9 of them. Johnny Carson interviewed him when Johnny Carson was interviewing. He said, boxing is the only sport where the purpose of the sport was to injure a man. And Muhammad Ali replied to Johnny saying, his purpose was to win, not to really hurt a man for life. He dedicated his life for used it and his popularity for helping many charities. And he thought always that, so when I die, if there is a heaven, I want to see it. And that's how he moved through life. He would record, years ago, they had cassette recorders. I remember those. And he would record his children's voice. He would ask them questions and he would make these recordings and keep them. So one day he was talking with one of his sons and he said to him, everything has a purpose. God made everything with a purpose. Cows have a purpose. The sun has a purpose to give light, and it grows things. Stars, moon, the trees, ants, everything has a purpose. So he asked his son, he says, now, what is your purpose? And his son replied, make people feel better, to fix them. Once there was a small young man, a small boy that came to his dressing room after his fight. And the father told Muhammad Ali that he had cancer and he didn't have that long to live. So Muhammad Ali would talk with him, and he told him, he says, I'm going to beat George Foreman, and you're going to beat cancer. He believed greatly in his supreme being. He knows that a true Muslim is against terrorism, it's against war, it's against hate, it's against drugs and alcohol. It is a religion of peace. So he got drafted. And at the age of 25, he denied the military service. Now, he had taken the test in 1964 and had failed the test. Remember, he was 371 out of 396 in his class. But he had dyslexia, so he had a challenge in reading. So the draft board insisted upon, they were going to get him. So they lowered the standards and reclassified him without him taking the test again in 1966. He says, nope, I'm not going to war. So he was stripped of his heavyweight title. He was suspended from boxing. No state would allow him to box. He had the potential of actually going to prison for 5 years and a $10,000 fine. And they also took his passport away from him. Ali says, I ain't got no quarrel with those Viet Cong. They never call me Negro or worse. They never lynched my people. They never raped my people. My enemy is white, the white that do not stand up for me. So-called Negroes have fought in every single war. And then when they came back to the United States, they could not go to a movie theater. They could not drink out of the same fountain. They could not go to a restaurant and get a meal other than going around to the back door. There was segregation everywhere. No, he was not going to go into the war. So in 1967 in Houston, when he denied stepping forward to be inducted into the Army, then all of these rights that he had to be able to fight, and his passport and all that was taken away from him. There, at that time, and probably still is, a disproportionately amount of Black men being killed, at least in the Vietnam War. At the time of the war, there was only 11% of the nationwide population that were Black people, but 20%. There were 20% of Black men were died in the Vietnam War. Ali was determined that he was not going to sell his people out, that he was going to stand morally against the war, and he was a conscientious objector. He was protesting racial inequality, his religious freedom, and the Vietnam War. He risked everything, and everything was taken away from him. Ali was a man with purpose. Some interviewers asked him about going to jail. Wasn't he afraid of that? And he says that Black folks have been in jail for 400 years, and that the Islamic faith means peace. So Muhammad Ali took another course because he couldn't fight anywhere. He couldn't go out of the country to fight. So he started speaking at universities and colleges. And he said that the so-called Negroes have been brainwashed. That Black power was bad and everything white was good. There was the white Jesus, there was the white God, there was Snow White. Mary had a little lamb and her feet were white as snow. There was the angel food cake that was white. Tarzan was white and he was in the jungle and he could talk to the animals, but the Africans couldn't. There was the White House. There is the white angels that, when you think about angels, they're always generally white. Miss America was white. Miss Universe was white. Probably all the states at that time had white Miss whatever. But then there was the devil food. There was dark chocolate. So there was the black lie. And the devil was always a Black devil. It was never a white devil. He was a proud man. And he always called so-called Negroes, because all the other ethnicities in the country, there would be Italians because they were from Italy, or they were Chinese and they were from China, or they were Russians from Russia. But there wasn't a country called Negro. He spoke out about marrying your own, doing for yourself, being independent, separate but equal, and that includes the schools and restaurants and everything. Staying with your own people, helping the struggles of Black people, having an attitude of being somebody, buying products that were produced from Black people, help with the freedom struggle. That is what he talked about: self-determination, Black resilience, and Black pride. So after 3.5 years, the Supreme Court did overrule the judgment that they had in Houston. And so he was able to start fighting again, and that happened in 1971. The decision for him not being guilty was 8-0. So after 3.5 years of not being able to fight, Ali lost his championship title, the possibility of going into prison, fined for $10,000, his passport taken away. But after all of that, I can say that Ali, Muhammad Ali, truly was a purpose-driven man.